Well, welcome everybody. If you're if you were looking for the prototyping speech, this is the right room. So, I'm Andy, and this is Alan. I work on our mobile apps, native mobile apps. And Alan, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I work a lot on ArcGIS Online. Primary stuff I work on is the JavaScript API and a lot of the 4X API widgets and stuff like that. But generally, UI designer.
Yep. So let's go ahead and get started. How many of you guys have had any experience with prototypes? Great. All right, so we got some people in here that know what's going on. So what is a prototype for those that don't work with prototypes? So it's a tool that really helps you validate the process, your ideas. It helps really get those thoughts into the hands of the users.
So wait, isn't that a wireframe?
No, it's not a wireframe. Yeah, so no, wireframes are different. We start with wireframes. Prototypes are actually about the interactions. So one screen could be a wireframe, but a prototype might have lots of different variations of the interactions that happen just on that one screen.
Cool. So what's prototype going to do for you? One thing it's going to give you, what we're saying, like innovation through validation. And what we mean by that is that it allows you to explore different ideas with the confidence that you can identify the right ideas by testing that, by really kind of proving, does that idea actually work?
Money. So it's really going to help you guys save some money. We've said, and you may have heard a lot, it's easier to try things on the whiteboard and go back there than try to build things out completely and then have to take a step back to the beginning. Testing things early will help you save money inevitably.
Right. Good times. Who doesn't want good times, right? But what we're talking about here specifically is your time well spent. If you have an idea and you go all the way through development and release, and you find that the feature or change that you made actually wasn't a good feature or change, right? That never happens. That you spent all that time investing in something that may not have been the right decision.
Less magical. So those ideas that some people may have a really strong opinion in the group, it's not snake oil or anything that they're selling there. When you actually have a prototype and you can put it in the user's hands and have them use it, all of a sudden they become the champion. They're that voice, and it really levels the playing field that you're working with everybody. Nobody's saying that, well, at my previous company, this is the way that users interact with this. Let's see what our users really do, and that's what a prototype's all about.
And shared vision is probably one of the most powerful ones. When you use prototypes, like you can have discussions all day about what's going to be best for the user, but that prototype allows you to really make a decision. So you're not spending endless hours in meeting rooms talking about it. You're actually doing something about it, and then the team can kind of centralize around the proof that you've come up with those prototypes.
Yeah, even to add to that, I was going to say that a lot of times people that are maybe you're working with a team and you've got some stakeholders in the meeting. Sometimes the creativity level of that particular person might be a challenge for them to express their ideas. But when you have prototypes, it allows everybody to kind of work together to really illustrate their ideas, even if it's something, we'll get into that later, but even if it's something as simple as a piece of paper.
Yeah. So we sometimes talk about hippos, which is the highest paid opinion in the room, and this helps kind of battle that as well. So let's talk about that gives us a good idea of what that prototype is going to do or what prototypes can do for you. We'll dig a little bit into levels of fidelity with your prototype, and I'll just kind of let you go through this whole thing.
So this is something called the $1 prototype. And what works really good is index cards or even Post-it notes, the rectangular ones, turn out to be the same size as a phone device. So a lot of times If you want to just illustrate an idea really quickly, you can pull a pad of Post-it notes out and start sketching up at least a mobile UI on a Post-it note. Hand it off. You can actually feel what it looks like in your hand. You can test these things like, is it too far to reach? Obviously, these are very low-level fidelity prototypes, but they still work. And a pack of paper is pretty easy to start with. And something I wanted to kind of note, I'll be talking about some of the software we use along the way too. Something like this could actually be turned very quickly into a clickable prototype with just your phone. Using something like Pop, who just recently got bought by, let me make sure I have them right this week, Marvel. So yeah, if you go to Marvel, they have something called Pop, and you can use your phone's camera, take a snapshot of each of the screens, and then really simply just link them all together. Email that out, and you've got a hand-drawn clickable prototype. So they don't have to always be really high fidelity. So this is one using Envision or Flinto. This one's actually built using Flinto. You can see on our scale there, it's kind of at a medium level of fidelity. But we're using a lot of the typical iOS components that are right inside of there. But this one screen as a wireframe may have only been a map with a toolbar on it. But as you can see, there's a lot more interactions that go on in this particular screen than would in a wireframe. So, Flinto and Envision really tells more of a story when you're tapping through the different screens. They provide some limited functionality between the screens. And this one, as you can see, Flinto, for a particular interaction, a user might not know the difference when they're testing it to it being a fully developed app.
Speaking of which,
fully programmed. So there's times here at Esri that we've done it before. We program out complete prototypes that are programmed in the native language. So recently we did some testing with 2 iOS versions of an app and 2 Android prototypes. So quite a bit of work from the team involved in getting this together. But it's important to understand the scale of your prototype to the product. And we're going to go into that a little bit later. But I just wanted to touch on the fact that fully programmed interfaces, whether they be in the native mobile languages or HTML, JavaScript, you could speak to that too.
Yeah, pretty much the same. It's a bit more investment, but it's probably will give you the most realistic data. So we're going to talk about some pitfalls that we want to avoid. So the prototype is like the rope. It makes you go over the pitfall. You still have to jump over some logs, though, and the little scorpion. So one pitfall you want to watch out for is safety. Like Mike Rowe always says, safety third. You want to take risks. Prototypes are cheap, right? So that's where you want to take your risks. Not like we were talking about before, making that risk happen at the release level as at all possible. We don't want to be protective with our ideas. We want to be ruthless with our ideas. So kind of like we were talking about before, this is, the prototypes really allow you to take your idea and then put it out there, test it, and then make iteration your weapon of choice. The concept of the perfect user, right? We see this a lot of times when we do usability testing, where we get frustrated because the user isn't the perfect user and doesn't immediately understand our interface. We're talking real talk, okay? We want to get real responses, but that also means that you need to find the most realistic users that you can. If you can get it into the real user's hands, obviously you'll have to do probably some NDAs or something like that, but if you can do that, that's going to be your best situation. Obviously with something like the $1 prototype, that can work like in the office, just do quick guerrilla testing like that with that kind of prototype. And the environment. So one thing is like your example where they're doing a mobile app where you're out in the field and you're doing stuff out in the field. Andy went through the trouble of making that prototype testing happen out in the field. So they weren't like in an office somewhere, they were actually out getting like real geolocated data and working with that, and got a much more realistic result.
And to that point, when you're out testing things in a real environment with a prototype, you could see things that we didn't really realize. In the particular app, it's going to be field workers. In a sit-down environment with the prototype, they're at a desk, but we didn't realize they're going to be out carrying a clipboard and a mobile phone. Maybe the choice of putting the fab way up too far in the corner and having them reach with the second hand is going to be too much work. Those are things you don't see unless you take the time to prototype. Or contrast in the UI. I couldn't see what I was doing. I thought I did something, but turns out I got back to the office and it didn't work. Those are the things that you can really head off if you start doing prototyping early.
Sweet. And this is less of a, actually I'm gonna let you talk to this because you had a good spiel on this.
Well, scale it to the effect. So let's think about this for a second. Just like we do with the prototype, or our wireframe, I should say. If I've got a $1 prototype that's sketched out on paper, and I decide I'm going to prototype this, I'm probably not going to go into Flinto and create my prototype at that level. I'm going to go and incrementally move from a wireframe sketch to maybe a more high fidelity prototype, and then get to, if I need to, that programmed interface. Now, what we wanted to talk about here with scaling it is consider your audience too. If this is a new app release, maybe you're not going to really want to invest a lot of money into prototyping. So maybe you'll stick more with those low fidelity prototypes. But consider maybe you've got 50 to 100,000 users using your app. You may really want to consider putting a lot of effort into those prototypes so that you bring that confidence back to the team that Alan was talking about. You get everybody on the same page. They understand the vision. They know that the users are getting it. And then you can start to move on to those extra development stages. And everybody can move forward with confidence. So it's really about deciding where your prototype fidelity lives with your product, as well as what prototype tool to use.
Sweet. One last thing on that is like, how much are you changing the interface? If it's an existing product and you're changing a couple of things, the prototype can be relatively low fidelity, but if it's a large effect, you may want to go a little bit further with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when do we use prototypes? So we kind of put this diagram together. Like, this is what we'll often see. This is what we'll often see, where you're going to start somewhere over here. You're going to do a bunch of stuff. You're going to develop a release, find out stuff sucks, and then you have to kind of come back and then rethink it. And that can be very expensive, right? So what we're suggesting is, with prototypes, you have more chances, right, to kind of change your mind. In the previous example, we're kind of locked into our decisions early on, and this allows us to kind of be a lot more agile, to kind of come back to hypothesis or wireframe or UI design at any point. If we're going to prototype, maybe we've gone to development and we realize, hey, actually, there was a couple of things we discovered there, we can kind of come back through. So just being able to cycle through and mitigate risks.
All right.
Let's do an exercise.
So we're going to do a little exercise here. So what we wanted to do is, since we're kind of limited on, we'd love to give you all devices and just have you prototype on those. But what we're going to do is, we're in a limited capacity, we're going to start with paper prototyping. So what we've done here is I've just printed a bunch of maps. I've taken some really basic tools in Sketch and just made some toolbars and some different things. I'm going to actually go through and prototype these screens out, which is a map that helps us find our friends nearby and contact them. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to test this prototype with Alan and show you how that whole process looks.
With these three interactions, these three interactives.
So the first one being seeing the friend's details, the second one being searching and filtering, and then the last one. friend actions.
Oh.
And we don't want
I didn't hear.
to know
Okay.
the action for that. All right. So we've got our map here. And let's put Joey out on the map here.
Okay.
So, Alan, if you were to use this interface, what would you do to get the user's details?
I think I would tap on this dude.
All right. So what I thought was we could slide this up.
Oh.
And from here, what do you think you could do?
It looks like I see that I have his details there, his name and how far away he is. Looks like I can email him or maybe email it to somebody else. I could text him or I can call him.
Okay.
Yeah, and it looks like I could tap this and close it.
That's right. And it would flip out.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So our next screen is what we want to do is we want to find one of our friends, Megan, who's out on the map here.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is let's get this up here.
Okay.
So you do tap to find a user on the map. So we're going to search for them.
It looks like there's a search icon here, so I would tap on the search icon.
So what we thought is that the search would reveal from below the nav bar. Okay.
So I would assume that there would be immediately a keyboard here, but it looks like I have to tap on it before the keyboard shows up.
Yes. So it enters the text mode. You start typing. Okay. And then the results start to pop up. Okay. So how do you think you're looking for the closest Megan? How do you think you'd get to the closest Megan?
It looks like to find the closest Megan, I would use this slider.
Okay. And then these would disappear and it would show. Yeah. Exactly.
Cool. Wow, this seems like it takes up a lot of space. Maybe if this were somewhere else.
Okay. So what we could do is maybe we'll talk about moving this little guy up into somewhere into here.
Oh.
So what I'd do is make a little note. We need to put a slider right inside of that guy. Put a note there to make sure we talk to our designers about that later. Okay, so you get that, all right? So now what we're gonna do
See, okay?
is we've got a couple of people out here on the map. And our last one is, I want you to find out how to get a notification when a particular friend gets within 10 miles of you.
Okay. So I'm gonna tap on this guy.
That would bring up this.
Oh, well, that didn't work, so I'd have to close that.
Okay.
Then maybe I would use long press.
There we go.
Oh, look at that. Notify me when.
All right.
And then
there you
I
go.
would expect. Do you want to know what I would expect?
Oh, I'd love to.
Okay. I would expect a little panel to come up that would allow me to set that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Cool. You should join our team.
Hey.
All right, so that kind of shows you, we played it out a little bit here for you guys, but I mean, this really, you don't have to print them up at this scale or anything, but you could work with 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper and a UI template cut up. And that's actually what we've done for an exercise that we'd like you guys to go through. So if you want to go to the next slide there. This is our exercise. So what we've done, to give you a little context, it's the same app. What we've done is we've switched over from the map view to the list view, and we've got a bunch of users in a list here. What we'd like to see you guys do is prototype a few different interactions. So one being add a friend, delete a friend, search and results, and then friend details from this list. What we'd also like is we'll have one of you guys designate as the presenter and one person as the tested person. And we'll just break you guys up into kind of groups of
7.
Sounds good. All right.
So we'll have about 15 minutes to work on the prototype, and then we'll like call time, and then you have to like pick that person that's your test, like being tested, and then kind of run them through that. I mean, obviously you will know what's going on, but it's just kind of nice to at least kind of role play that.
Exactly.
Cool.
And
So-
we'll be floating around and giving you guys pointers and tips along the way. So that being said, why don't we do 1, 2, so let's get,
Here's your package. 2.
pull together there.
Yeah, they got one. So
Here,
about 7 people.
I'll put you in charge. Yep.
Do you guys need another package over here?
You're lucky. One of you guys want to take this?
Yeah, here you go.
And we put a little bit of everything in there. So all the screens, paper, pencils, stickers, all kinds of stuff.
We got another pack here. Looks like somewhere over here maybe needs one. Are you with this group?
I was going to go with these guys, but
Okay. So we could. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Scissors if you guys need some.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You guys are good. Okay. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Do you guys need another pack over there? Little split. Oh, okay. I think we're good.
All right.
We got a big.
There's a small envelope inside. It's got some of the smaller components in there that you can use in the cost. You can use anything in there that you want. You don't have to use any of it. You can draw it all out. So you want to make sure you guys are getting the difference between wireframing and prototyping. Is your mic off?
All right, guys, if you could start wrapping up your prototyping and start prepping to switch into testing. Pick a test subject. If you have a small group, turn around and pick that guy behind you who wasn't doing anything and use him as a tester.
And just the same way as Alan and I did. I know it might feel awkward, but you guys, some of you know each other, most of you probably don't, so we're all good here. Walk through it and kind of go through the process. Even though it feels a little bit awkward possibly, this process will make it a little easier when you get back and you're doing your own ideas.
All right, guys. Sweet. So it seems like I'm hearing like some iterations happening within your prototyping, which is like kind of a microcosm of what a lot of times we'll see, where you're discovering, even going into the first couple of steps of presenting your prototype to somebody who even knows how to work, who is part of building it, that you're going to discover some new ideas, a lot of insights. So yeah, like any insights, anything anybody noticed? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, at least this exercise felt a lot like wireframing in that we were adding kind of new functionality to our interface. And so I guess is the difference between prototyping and wireframing something more to do with the action? Or
Yeah.
what part of the difference?
Right. So to reiterate, like what you're saying is you like asking, like it seems similar to wireframing, but it seems like we're focusing more on that interaction, and that's hitting it right on the head. It's really about the interactions.
Yeah. Well, and just like this is one static screen, but think of all the variations and all the combinations that can happen off of this one possible screen. What happens when somebody scrolls all of their contacts off the screen? What does that look like? These are all things that a prototype could answer. You know, we talk about edge cases and stuff. Prototypes address those edge cases where the user's done something in the UI and it's not acting the way the user thinks it should. So you get so many answers out of these things.
Right.
It's really valuable.
And this kind of like a paper prototype is going to have a lot of overlap with a wireframe. And the further you go down that road of fidelity, the closer you get to like the fully developed interface, the more you'll kind of see the difference between the two. Mm-hmm. And like you're talking about addressing edge cases, you will discover edge cases. Like we purposefully built it in to say the add friend is at the bottom of that, and like multiple groups all said, well, what if you had 50 friends, right? And as soon as you go to start prototyping it, you discover those kind of things. Absolutely. We totally did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah.
Well, let's open it up. I mean, if anybody has questions, and you're more than welcome to ask questions afterwards. I know sometimes people aren't comfortable asking in a group environment. We're going to be here for a while afterwards. But as a group, does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
It looked like you pointed.
Yeah.
So generally, you would wireframe the document first, or the app first, and this would be step 2 on certain interactions.
Absolutely.
This is not the beginning, this is step after.
Exactly. When I was mentioning early, like the $1 paper prototype, yes, the lines get a little blurred because you do need to wireframe first, and then the gestures and the movement would be the prototype. Prototyping fits in somewhere between wireframing and then user testing. So a user test probably wouldn't involve a wireframe, it would involve a prototype. So that kind of gives you an idea of where it fits in the timeline. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool.
Probably something that most of the company has a bit of difficulty with is prototyping and explaining an idea of an app to non-technical audiences and those very senior level people that are the key decision makers that have to sign on the dotted line for something. In your experience, is it this more very tactile, they can hold something in their hands and play around with it in terms of actually like a physical piece of paper and that sort of workshop? Does that get across the idea very well to those non-technical audiences, or how do you deal with that problem?
One of the ways we kind of think about it is the fidelity of what you're working with kind of needs to match the fidelity of the idea. So if it's just like a rough idea, like, hey, we should do something, then that's kind of what that prototype looks like, because it's not formed enough. And as you get to you start on thinking about, okay, how is this gonna? You start identifying your edge cases, and you have a better idea of what that feature or application or screen needs to do. Then that higher fidelity tends to sell those ideas a little bit better, and then you really start the stakeholders as well as developers and designers. The entire team really starts to understand and have a shared vision of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, getting those people involved that you're talking about early too. And I mean, there's certain cases where, this wouldn't work. I've got to get the CTO to sign off on something. This probably wouldn't be that cool if I rolled in with this. And they were like, really, you've been doing that all week? I might want to do something different. That's when Flinto comes in. That's when Envision comes in. Even though sometimes, though, it's all based on really a balance between how much time you're going to invest in something, who you're really working this out for. Decision makers, they really need sign off on it, and they're a little different than I think what our real user is, and you really want to test the user. But prototypes are great, I think, for showing decision makers and in a meeting. I do preface that by saying, though, that you may want to demo these things for them before you just hand them a prototype blindly and just say, go through it, because a prototype usually is a set of particular things that you've prototyped and not just an entire app. and you send them in there, and they'll inevitably find every piece of the prototype that broke and give you all feedback on the broken pieces that you didn't intend on prototyping anyways. So my point is, probably walk them through those kinds of things and show them a demo first, and then allow them to experience it, because that'll be valuable to you when it does come time to make a decision. Any other questions?
Just sweet spot for size of these groups. You're in a smaller team. What's kind of the preferred landing place for that?
In the apps group, we do 3 to 4 maximum. So usually it's one or two designers, and then we usually get developers in there as well. So 2 product designers and like.
Are you talking about with testing with? People that actually test the prototype with? Is that?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
that was just putting the prototype together.
Oh, yeah. In terms of like your test group size, if you can get a good set of testers, like people who are, like we're talking about, like as close to your real users as possible, like 5 to 10 is usually pretty good. Like it's a much smaller number than you would think. Like you can do 500, but you're probably going to get around the same results. It's like about 5 to 10.
Where does technical proof of concept fit into this flow? Because when somebody says, I want an app that does this, I'd be thinking to myself, well, how can I actually get it done behind even the interface itself?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to make sure that you can actually do it.
Yeah. But I think to the question I answered before that kind of incorrectly was get developers in with the designers and have because we're looking through a prototype and a developer's going to say, no, we can't.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
And I think like one thing I've experienced anyway is like at some point I need a developer to help me create the prototype. And like a lot of us, and I do some front-end development, I'll immediately go, yeah, I don't think we can do that. And then as soon as I'm starting to do it, then I become really creative and figure out a way to do it. So it's really good to have the developer involved early on with prototyping.
Cool.
Other questions? Where does Andy get his cool styles? Do you want to know that? No?
Target.
Cool. All right, so we'll be around. Please do this thing with the stuff to tell us things so that we can kind of be better. I'm sure you guys have heard this a million times throughout but this does definitely help us make your experience at Dev Summit better. So please review us. You can look up our session using the app and give us 5 stars.
Yeah. And then we'll be speaking at UC.
And then we'll be at UC and we'll be famous.
Yeah. Questions that you guys have afterwards, technical for software all the way to just concepts, come up, ask us. We're an open book. We love to share.
Yep. Thanks, guys.